Today I'm very happy to present this check from Catholic Charities of New York to Caritas of Puerto Rico. Hermana Thelma is part of Catholic Charities in Puerto Rico, and Catholic Charities of New York is making a donation of funds that will provide 20,000 meals to hungry families who are here. And yesterday we were privileged with some of the members of the New York State Legislature to visit the wonderful, warm program that Sister Thelma runs, and to meet 100 families who will benefit from these funds and this food, and to be able to help them to have a more decent food that they can provide for their families. And so that was a wonderful experience. Gracias por la oportunidad de colaborar con Caritas de Puerto Rico. Caridades Católicas de Nueva York está proveyendo los fondos para proveer 20,000 comidas a las familias que no tienen suficiente en Puerto Rico. Es un símbolo de la unión del pueblo de New York con el pueblo de Puerto Rico y proveer ayuda que entiende la dignidad de la persona hecha en imagen de Dios. Esta comida provee comidas para familias, para los niños, para los adultos, para vivir sus vidas en un poquito más dignidad.
Sí, a nombre de Caritas de Puerto Rico, ¿verdad? El director de Caritas es el padre Enrique Camacho, que no ha podido estar aquí presente, pero nosotras trabajamos con él en estos programas que Caritas realiza y que le da ayuda, como dice, ¿verdad?, a todas estas personas necesitadas. Realmente este dinero pues será utilizado precisamente para eso. Muchas veces pues no lo creemos, pero aquí en Puerto Rico hay miles y miles y miles de personas que están muriendo de hambre. O sea, a veces uno dice, pero un plato de comida no va a hacer la diferencia. Nosotras, por ejemplo, yo tengo un programa de auxiliares en el hogar, que son las personas viejitos encamados totalmente, que por una u otra razón los familiares lo han dejado abandonado. Y la semana pasada precisamente yo estuve atendiendo a un envejeciente, un viejito de 92 años, y él me hacía toda la historia de cómo él se dedicó a sus hijos y todo eso. Yo estuve con él por la mañana, me fui como a las 2 de la tarde, y al otro día yo regresé a las 10 de la mañana y lo encontré muerto, sentado en la silla donde lo dejé. Lo que quiere decir que nadie había ido a visitarlo desde el día anterior que yo estuve ahí. Y así hemos tenido varios casos, y muchas veces uno no cree, pero estas aportaciones son las que nos ayudan a nosotros a poder llevar estos programas adelante, porque si no, no se podría. Lo mismo el programa de madres solteras que tenemos un centro de envejecientes donde los viejitos que pueden caminar, pues se les da la comida, las meriendas y se les atiende durante el día. Pero hay algunos que no pueden caminar y son a los que tenemos que ir a atender en el hogar. Así que esta ayuda para nosotros realmente es bien, bien valiosa y le agradecemos muchísimo.
Gracias.
Welcome everyone to our villa here in San Juan. We're very pleased to have a very special guest with us in New York Catholic Charities, and Monsignor Kevin Sullivan. Thank you for joining us for our discussion today.
Thank you for having us. We're just very, very pleased to be here.
For those of you who don't know, I'm Nick Powell. I'm the opinion editor at City and State Magazine. We've been here for a few days talking to a variety of elected officials and faith leaders, such as Reverend DeGraff in the audience. And we're continuing our discussion today with Monsignor Sullivan. So I'm curious, People might be wondering why New York Catholic Charities is in attendance at the Somos conference here in San Juan. Why did you feel that your presence here was necessary and important, and what have you accomplished over the last few days?
Two main reasons why we're here. A reason why we participate in this all the years is because we believe that our interaction with the legislature of New York State is critically important for helping to create the common good in New York. And so we find this a great opportunity to talk about issues that are important to the people of New York, issues that Catholic Charities experiences firsthand in the help that we provide to over 250,000 people each year. So we know the problems that New Yorkers have, and we think it's a good opportunity for us to share our own experiences as the legislature is trying to deliberate on how they're going to do their jobs in creating good public policies and good programs. The second reason this year why it's particularly important that we're here is because of the economic crisis that Puerto Rico is undergoing, and to express our solidarity with the people of Puerto Rico who have been such a gift to New York is just terribly appropriate this year, and it's something that made this trip this November even more important than it is most years.
And I understand you, while you were here, you also went on some, I guess, fact-finding missions, if you will, going to some child care providers and things of that sort. Can you give us a little insight into some of the things that you discovered on these trips?
Sure. Yesterday morning, we went to one of the housing projects in Puerto Rico, and in that housing project is a community center. And the community center is run by Boys and Girls Clubs of Puerto Rico. And one of the reasons we were delighted to be there is because what they do in that center in Puerto Rico is what so many of our Catholic Charities agencies do in different parts of New York. So with us was the Chief Operating Officer of Cardinal McCluskey Services, also some of the directors of the program, the New York Foundling, and the New York Foundling has a major Head Start program in different sites in Puerto Rico. So it provided a good opportunity for us to learn and to see what was going on here, and to learn a little bit how we might do things in New York to better serve people there. In addition to that, probably the high point from my point of view of the trip was the opportunity that Catholic Charities of New York has to partner with Caritas of Puerto Rico in providing an additional 20,000 meals to hungry families that Caritas of Puerto Rico serves in more than, I believe, 26 different sites throughout this island. So yesterday afternoon, we went and we helped serve meals to more than 100 hungry families. And we did it with the legislators of New York State, and it was just a wonderful partnership to show our solidarity with Caritas of Puerto Rico in meeting the needs of the Puerto Rican community.
Sure. I wanted to ask, we had Dennis Rivera as one of our guests on our live stream interviews the other day, and he was telling us about how he went about organizing the big healthcare rally on Thursday. He mentioned that in kind of the process of organizing, he ran a poll among Puerto Rican citizens that whether on who they had the most faith in. And I think the results were faith leaders were the top, then it was, or no, I'm sorry, National Guard was the top, believe it or not. Big box stores, faith leaders, and elected officials were very much at the bottom of those rankings. On the one hand, that's an enormous compliment for faith leaders such as yourself, but I'm curious, what needs to be done to restore the faith in Puerto Rican elected officials who obviously have a huge stake in solving this problem?
Well, listen, I have a hard enough time figuring out how we maintain and grow faith in faith leaders. And so I'll let the elected officials decide what they need to do to restore their faith. But I do think the same with us faith leaders, with religious organizations, those affiliated with organizations like Catholic Charities. What we have to always do is remember that we serve those in need, and that basically we do it in a way that has to reflect integrity, has to reflect accountability, and it has to not be for our own self-interest, but for the common good. And I think if whatever segment of society it is, whatever job anybody has, if they operate in that way, there will be a restored faith in those important institutions.
I wanted to take a step back for a minute. Catholic Charities obviously has a number of charitable endeavors that you guys are involved with. How do you go about prioritizing what to pour resources into and energy into? Is it more or less fluid? Or is it steady year to year? I'm just curious to get a little bit.
Well, we're constantly in the business of assessing where the greatest need is. What we find is that there is so much need that we can't meet it all, and that doesn't make us happy. It makes us sad that there are more need than resources to meet those needs. Now, in our reassessing all the time, we look at where those needs are and we try to respond to them. But quite frankly, over the past 40, 50 years, and as we just did a reassessment, we find there are 5 areas that we have to keep focusing on. There are children that need nurturing and they need protecting. There are families, they need strengthening. And when there's a crisis, we have to help resolve it. And sometimes the other areas where those crises show themselves is people without a decent meal or they don't have a decent place to live. So those are our constant focus. And we also need to make sure that even when somebody is severely challenged, whether it be a developmental disability, whether it be some type of emotional problem, that those families and those individuals need to be treated with dignity and compassion. And so we need to provide for them, and Catholic Charities does that. And finally, the area being from New York, that is a high priority for us, is welcoming newcomers, immigrants and refugees. So we stay focused on those 5 areas: protecting and nurturing children, strengthening families, feeding the hungry, sheltering the homeless, those with physical, emotional challenges, and newcomers, immigrants and refugees. And those are the areas in which we place our emphasis through our 90 Catholic Charities agencies.
You mentioned homelessness, and obviously the homeless crisis in New York City has become very much a pressing issue. I believe last time I checked there was 59,000 plus living in the shelters, and I'm sure many more living in the street. Is this as bad as you've seen it in your time at Catholic Charities? And what are you doing on the ground to alleviate that, or partnering with city government to get people off the street?
If there were one individual, one family that had to sleep on the street, that would be too many. Having said that, there is more than one family, and there is a crisis that we have to address. I'll just be very personal. I live in a church which is near Grand Central Station. And this past winter, when I came home at night, very often, I had to wake up and talk to a homeless man, Paul was his name, who made the steps of the church his home. We tried to get him help, and then we couldn't, we were going to get him help, and then he didn't come back, so we didn't know where he was. So it is a problem. And that's one of the things that we're doing in Catholic Charities in New York. We're partnering with New York City, and we're going to be opening up some beds in which people can stabilize their lives. They have a place to get respite where they can live as we move them to a permanent housing. So we do have to do more in that area. It is a crisis. Catholic Charities is doing it. We're partnering with a lot of people goodwill.
Have you had conversations, I'm sure, with Mayor de Blasio about the nuances of this crisis? Because they've thrown a ton of money at prevention. I believe $1 billion in the last fiscal year alone, and they plan on spending $6 billion in the next 4 years. But is it the type of issue where it's not necessarily something that you can just keep throwing money at to get people off the streets? Are there gaps in the system that need to be filled in your eyes?
One of the blessings of Catholic Charities is that through our various agencies, we try to provide a range of services. So in that housing area, we have a tremendous program which tries to keep people in their apartments. That we've doubled that program in the past year, so that over 2,000 families now each year we're preventing from losing their apartments and becoming homeless. So you got to prevent people who have a home from losing it. So that's one. Then you have people who are in shelters, which is temporary, and other transitional housing. And you have to make sure that's safe and decent, but it's not the final solution. So we're doing some of that. And then one of the things else we did, Catholic Charities in New York, there were old apartments that had been developed years ago. We worked on about 2,500 affordable apartment units and made sure they were renovated so that they were decent places. And right now, we're in the process of trying to develop over the next 5 years an additional 1,500 apartments that are going to be affordable for people. So you got to deal with the whole thing. And all of this we've done in collaboration with New York City, trying to make them a partner in all three phases: preventing, providing safe temporary housing, and permanent affordable housing. And we just need to do a lot more of that.
You mentioned immigration as well as a big focus of Catholic Charities. There's so much misinformation being bandied about, especially in the presidential cycle, mostly by Republicans, quite frankly. What would you say to some of these candidates who are demonizing families, trying to cross the border to better their economic situation, to provide for their families? What's missing in the conversation that doesn't seem to be registering with some of these candidates?
Well, first thing I would say to any candidate, give me a call. And let's sit down and meet some of the newcomers who are in New York and in the United States. Meet the families who are getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning to provide for their families. Meet the teenagers who are filling out all the forms they possibly can to get into a good college. What I'd say to the people who want to demonize people is, come meet the demons, and you won't find demons. You'll find somebody just like you, made in God's image and likeness, somebody who wants to make America a better place, and somebody thinks that they can make their lives and the lives for their families better in these great United States. Just don't talk about people. Come meet them, come see them, and the story will be different.
Well-received advice,
right?
Clearly. I wanted to wrap up our conversation by asking a little bit about the Pope's visit to New York City. Obviously, it was a monumental event for millions of people stateside and in the city itself. Has his visit, I guess, increased the fundraising capacity for your organization and kind of shine a new light on charitable organizations such as yourself?
Well, one of the things I do every time I can is, when the people tell me how impressed by the Pope was and how he wants to reach out to the poor, I say, well, would you like to help? So would you like to help and make a donation so that we have more resources?
Sure.
Okay, great. More important is we were just so privileged in New York. And I give a lot of credit to Cardinal Dolan for this, because he made sure when Pope Francis came to New York that he didn't just go to the UN, he didn't just go to Ground Zero, didn't just say Mass, but he made sure that he reached out and met with the people who Catholic Charities are helping. And who better than to meet with 150 immigrants and refugees from throughout the New York metropolitan area, whom about 25 different Catholic Charities programs and agencies are helping. And I had to say, I was kind of privileged to kind of be there when the Pope was there. And quite frankly, he met people. And I'll share with you a little bit of two things that the Pope said. One is, and why I say you have to meet immigrants and you have to meet refugees, you have to know them. He made a comment afterwards saying, boy, I didn't realize how diverse the immigrant and refugee community was in New York. He said, I was expecting many, many Latinos who were there, but I saw people from Africa, from Asia. I didn't realize how diverse New York was. And so if the Pope, when he meets, kind of gets a little bit of a broader vision, I'd invite anybody to come meet the immigrants of New York. Now, I'll tell you one little funny anecdote, okay? I kind of was privileged to say a word of welcome to him, and I did the welcome in Spanish. On the way out, I said to him, I said, Holy Father, I'm sorry, my Spanish isn't that good because I learned it in Colombia, not in Argentina. And he said to me, but the Colombians have better coffee.
Point taken. Monsignor Kevin Sullivan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.